And now for our feature presentation.
He'll be fine on the mountain.
JB and Darren on the JB and Goldwater Show.
Line drive right field, base hit. South Carolina wins the College World Series. Watson, touchdown. Hunter Renfrow. He got him, and it's all over. Coastal Carolina rules the roost. They win the championship. And South Carolina has won the national championship.
The Senegal baseball team has done it again, but this time the Bulldogs beat one of the top teams in the country. They are giant killers.
Get the ball to Bennett. He does.
Gamecocks are in the Final Four.
All right, greetings and a good Monday afternoon, and welcome aboard the JB and Goldwater Show, live, loud, and online, and driven by our friends and yours at Stokes Volkswagen. Find them at stokesvw.com. Find us on the JB and Goldwater app. You can download that into your phone. It's free, and you can always watch and listen to our program in its entirety daily between 12 and 2. Check us out anytime after that or whenever you please. Always, of course, follow us on social media at JB and Goldwater, individually at Sports Media JB, and at Darren Goldwater. JBandGoldwatershow.com as well to find out more about us, find out about our partners, and check us out anytime you so please. 843-321-8893 is our phone number. It is also our text line. It's available to all of you, and you can always contact us through whatever social media platform you may be using, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, whatever. Send us a note. Darren will make it a part of our program. What are we going to talk about today, Darren? Yep, Oklahoma and Texas, it looks like they're headed to the SEC. We'll get you updated on that in just a moment. It certainly is the topic of conversation across the country in sports radio, at least on the collegiate side of things. We do have Wes Mitchell at 12:30. We'll get his thoughts on that. It's also pretty much the final week of what you might call summer for college football, and then starting next week sometime in different areas, on different days, you've got fall camp commencing. Gamecocks haven't sent a schedule out yet, but we should have something this week. So we'll talk to Wes about that. Big recruiting cookout coming up as well. So we'll get into some recruiting stuff, some team notes with him. We do have Mike Morgan generally on Tuesdays, but he'll be with us today at 1:05. Mike has covered the Big 12 extensively in his career, and certainly one of the great national broadcasters with ESPN and the SEC Network has some thoughts on this. So we'll get to him at 1:05. We've got Collyn Taylor this afternoon at 1:40. Good week last week for South Carolina baseball. Both of their new coaches are now official. So we got some things to get to there. We'll talk about some hoop stuff with him, some football stuff. We've got Olympic updates. So it's a pretty full 2-hour program on this Monday afternoon. Darren, good afternoon to you, and how was your weekend?
I'll say this. I watched more Olympics than I thought I would, only because I've just been getting up earlier and works well with this whole thing in Tokyo. What Peacock is doing with this Tokyo Now recap, they've got like an old school Sports Center type, both in the morning and at night. You got Rich Eisen early on in the day, and then Kenny Mayne and Kerry Champion at night. I mean, it's laugh out loud, funny, dry humor type stuff about sports that we generally don't care about. We won't remember anything about, but we may as well cover it because it's in the Olympics. So I've enjoyed that. And I appreciate Texas and Oklahoma for keeping the ball rolling and not making us start a week with speculation, because they start the week by saying we're done. They haven't officially said we're going to the SEC, but they put out a joint statement between two separate schools that said they are not going to sign the rights to extend their media rights deal with the Big 12. That was the first thing that had to happen before they can actually move.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm with you, by the way. I have been watching the Olympics. You might be able to tell I'm a little under the weather, so I've stayed a little hunkered down the last couple of days And the swimming, once again, is the best thing on TV when it comes to the Olympics. Just I might throw that in there to everybody. But so we'll get to an Olympic update in a little bit. But yeah, exactly. The first step is now in place. The wording of that statement is interesting, Darren, because it says that they planned, or excuse me, intend to honor their existing grant of rights agreements, which of course run through 2025. You can pay essentially an early exit fee, which would be basically paying off your grant of rights. And I think that would accumulate to, I don't know, $150, $160 million or so total between these two institutions to exit much sooner, maybe as soon as next year. But I would caution, again, I'm not an attorney. I'm not in the know in any of this, but we know how a lot of these things generally work. Darren, when the wheels start turning in motion, you can often expect, especially when it's this level and they can find access to cash, you can expect it to probably happen maybe sooner than you might initially think. So they can't just come right out and say, we intend to end our agreement and here's why, because even if they say that, and doing some research this morning, they really open themselves up to some litigation tactics in the legal world out there. Right. So they have to have some crafty attorneys figure out exactly behind the curtain here how they're going to maneuver this moving forward before they can just publicly say, hey, we're out.
Yeah. I mean, I said this at the end of last week. I said it on Friday, that if the only obstacle here is money, that is not really an obstacle when we're talking about college football, the SEC, Texas. Right. You can throw Oklahoma into that mix also. So if that's the only hurdle, there really isn't a hurdle. And I said it on Friday that expect this to happen sooner than later once these wheels get in motion. The statement today left open every possibility for it happening sooner than later. It just said, as of now, here's where we are, and we're not going to sign that extension. The Big 12 still owns their media rights through 25 if they leave, unless that gets bought out. The most interesting article I read this weekend, and this is going to be a factor in how everybody else reacts, the Big 12, the Big 10, the Pac-10, 12, whatever they are, and whatever they're going to become, the ACC, it's ESPN's role in all of this. It's all speculative. No one's going to come out and say this. But let me just lay out a very quick scenario and why this makes a ton of sense. The Longhorn Network was created not necessarily to drive eyeballs, but it protected the Big 12 initially when the Pac-12 was going after Texas. That was a stumbling block. They could never get over it, and it preserved ESPN's foothold in the Big 12, not losing out to the Pac-12, which Fox basically controlled at the time. At the time, there was no Pac-12 network. Right. Now you've got the Longhorn Network, which nobody can see. It's losing money. ESPN owns it. You take that over. You just fold it over into the SEC network, however you want to do it.
That's right.
You grow your brand in terms of money. I don't know how many times exponentially. You bring in 2, maybe more, and you expand this thing to become an absolute dominant power that, oh, by the way, you, ESPN, control. There is a lot of backdoor conversations that have happened already, because this would not be happening if ESPN wasn't at the check cashing stage. There's more to come, and it is financially driven and it is television driven.
Well, I agree with that, because I had somebody ask me on Friday, well, do you think, okay, so if you're Texas, what happens to the Longhorn Network? And I said, nothing. It stays right there. I don't know as far as what content and things like that, but that is part of what makes Texas very valuable. If you bring Texas in, you like you said with ESPN, they're not having to do anything. They just make that part of the package. It gives you another outlet to show games, which, by the way, when they're playing in the league, SEC, you got 2 teams that have a whole nother platform to play on. Shoot, who knows? Maybe they even use that for other teams to play on, and then they expand it. I don't know.
They'd fold it, because there's no reason to keep the Longhorn Network at that point, because you're going to have their games on ABC, ESPN, and the SEC network, and you don't need the Longhorn network. You don't need the financial loss that you're taking every single year with the Longhorn network when you've got them anyway. You've got the SEC network. You don't need the Longhorn network anymore. So the question is, just from someone who's been in the business, and I care about people, what happens to the people at the Longhorn network? How many of them are casualties of this? Because you can't keep them all. The SEC network is fully staffed. Some people will survive, but there's going to be people looking for work because it'll get swallowed up and it'll go away.
Yeah, it's there are so many different angles to this. I mean, and again, the next step, by the way, just so people can understand kind of where they are, is the SEC presidents will have to approve them formally. The league does meet at 12:30 today. The Southeastern Conference does. They have regularly scheduled Monday meetings at 12:30. Did not have one last week because of media days, but this week they're kind of back on track. I can probably venture a quick guess here that this is what they'll be talking about very heavily, at least, Aaron. But yeah, it's going to happen. The lingering question for me is, what else do we not know? And that is, nobody really has those answers. I mean, you can ask questions like, is the SEC done? Are they trying to get to 16, or are they trying to get to 18? Are they trying to get to 20?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we don't know. Is this something where it's like, okay, if we can get these two in the fold, then we'll go after so-and-so? If you are the Big 12, is there any fear that you have other members of your league who are looking to, now that these two programs or institutions, will be moving on to the SEC, are there going to be others that say, hey, SEC, we'd like to join as well? Would they be interested in joining the Big 10 or the Pac-12? Would the conference want to merge with another league? Would they be interested in just adding teams? We're going to talk to Mike Morgan about a lot of this. So it's one of those things where right now we're in this kind of strange stage, at least in my opinion, where if this is something that interests you, if you're a college football fan, and you like realignment talk and things of that nature, right now you're in that creativity stage, Darren, where you can like recreate this sport almost however you'd like to, because there are so many scenarios at play. All right, so you pop this up, the SEC realignment. This is an example, I guess we would say.
Yeah, Michael Bratton, SEC Mike on Twitter, is the one who put this out, and I've credited him on here. Yeah,
absolutely. So, it's interesting because it does make sense from a geographical standpoint. The question with that is, okay, well, how do you put two teams in the SEC championship? And I guess according to Michael Bratton, it was, we just take the two best records and put them into the SEC championship. My question with that would be, why not just have two pods as part of the East and the West? And then you still take the East champion and the West champion. You get pods 1 and 2 in the West and pods 3 and 4 in the East. And so you have the pods for scheduling purposes, because I like the scheduling idea of that a lot. I can't stand the way that the SEC schedules now. I've been very vocal about that. It's a joke. But I would love the fact that you would play 3 opponents every single year. And for South Carolina, by virtue of this one, Kentucky, Georgia, and Florida, you'd miss Tennessee, but you'd also see the Vols every 2 years, basically. So, or I guess every 3 years after you play 2 in each pod. So you see what I'm saying? 3 and then 2 rotate from every other pod every 2 years. So I like that.
I like it. If you get down to the nuts and bolts of it, I like it. But to me, it's just confusing. Like, so I got a division and I got pods. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. It's confusing, but it is very much like what folks started saying last week. Think NFL type model. So let's say it's the pod system, right? And let's say this is the SEC pod. Let's just hypothetically say there's another team, 2 teams, 4 teams that might join this pod, and then another conference of, say, 20 teams that breaks off into a couple pods, and voila, you've got the AFC, you've got the NFC, and you've got divisions within the 2 conferences if you're going NFL model. You said it last week, you said it again today. We'll continue to say it. What we don't know, we don't know right now. We don't know what the Big Ten is thinking. We don't know what the Pac-12 is thinking. we don't know how the Big 12 and the American Conference is going to shake out. Like who eats who in that scenario? Does the American expand with the Big 12, or does the American get absolved into the Big 12 and other places? One thing I read today, which I loved, and I don't know if it's possible at all, it came out of The Athletic. It was the possibility of a Big 10 and Pac-12 merger.
Right.
Basically, the Big 10 taking 6 Pac-12 teams, UCLA, Oregon, Southern Cal, Washington, Stanford, Cal. I think those were the 6. And then again, creating pods where you've got some traditional Big 10 teams and then some of the West Coast teams in that pod. It strengthens that league enormously if you just pick the few that matter out of the Pac-12, but you have no idea. These next couple of weeks leading up to the season will be fascinating.
The issue with this whole conversation that we're having, Darren, is there isn't a commissioner of college football. And that's the problem. Like, we can imagine a perfect, imperfect, however you want to phrase it, design for the future of the sport all we want to, whether it's pods or divisions or AFC, NFC, however you want to word it. But at the end of the day, there isn't anybody who's overseeing this. Each league is overseeing itself. The NCAA has nothing to do with this. And so I have a fear that this could be very fractured for a while, until we find a way to get a little bit more cohesive. And you can't be cohesive without a leader. So who's the leader? Is it going to be Greg Sankey? We can imagine all these things, but the one thing I can imagine, Darren, where we're going in expanded playoff, super conferences, like at some point in time, somebody is going to have to say, okay, here's what we're doing. We're creating the college football network, and so-and-so is going to lead it for us. That's got to come at some point in time. It has to, because if not, then we could literally have these type of conversations every couple of years. If money is a factor, but it's not a hurdle, you see what I'm saying? Like, it's a hurdle until it's not. TV can buy you out, or league money can help buy you out and you pay it back. So if it's a factor, but it's not like a brick wall or something like that, it's just a hurdle to clear, then every 2 or 3 years you could have constant change within the sport. And I don't know that that's good. Like, we need to have consistency, but we also need to have the best model. So how do we get to the best model and then be consistent with it? And the only way to do that is to have some type of top-down structure.
It's hard to figure out what that model's going to be, but I think at this point it's pretty easy to say the model's necessary because that's where we're going, right? Yeah. I was talking to a Clemson fan friend right before the show, and there are rumors, right? They're only rumors that the SEC is talking to a lot of teams, which wouldn't shock me. If you're going big, you may as well try, right? There are plenty of rumors about Ohio State and Michigan. There are plenty of rumors about Clemson. None of them substantiated as of this point. But if you're the SEC, you may as well try, right? So my question is, do you jump to the SEC? Do you stay in the ACC? Whatever the mindset is, if you're a superpower, and I would Clemson, Florida State from a brand, Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, you can go UCLA, Southern Cal. If you're superpower as a unit, as one team, the only way you can think right now is for the future and for some type of 40 or 50 team group that has broken away from the rest of college football. Like I've said forever, the gap just got a whole lot bigger, and it's getting even bigger than we can imagine. If you're one of those teams, the only thought in your mind right now is, how can I position myself the best way possible to be a part of that elite group? Because not every Power 5 team will be in that elite group.
No, right. And you're right. And it just all goes back to you don't want to do that, though, unless the structure that is in place will be or can be beneficial to you. Like, if you're Clemson right now, you would be idiotic to want to be a part of this league the way that the setup is in college football. Okay, because right now, let's say this 12-team playoff clears, and it's expected to, and it probably will. The model is the top 4 seeds are the highest ranked conference champions. So the SEC is certainly going to get a team. We know that. One of them guaranteed every year is going to be in the SEC. And essentially, if another league goes away, you might have guaranteed where 4 leagues are getting one anyways. But if you jump ship in the current model or where it's trending to the SEC, then you're in a dog-eat-dog world. You're eating your own. But the league itself, their interest is to make it as powerful as it can be. But your interest as an institution, like if you're Clemson or whoever, if Ohio State or Michigan or something like that, is it going to be easier to get into the college football playoff running through this in the SEC, or is it going to be easier doing what you're doing right now? Which clearly it would be doing what you're doing right now. So the only way I would see that type of scenario personally, again, we don't know what we don't know. This could change in 30 seconds. Is if there is a total restructuring of the sport, as you mentioned, where you do have the SEC and the Pac-12 or whatever it is, and there are basically 40-team leagues, and there are divisions within those leagues, and if you win your division, you're in an automatic playoff.
Right. So if Clemson joins the SEC, whatever it is, as it grows, how many conferences are there going to be anyway? How many conference champs are you going to be picking from? Because you're counting the group of 5 in this current playoff model. They're not going to be counted. They're out. Then do you have 5 power conference leagues, or do you have 2? Or do you have 4? So my point in that discussion was you have to be considering every option here. So if your sense, and I am not saying this, I am just throwing this out there. If you're Clemson and you sense that the ACC, if it stands pat, isn't going to be strong enough to put you in a position to be in the elite, you got to get out, whether it's to the SEC or somewhere else. Or is the ACC proactive? There are tons of rumors out there, which I don't understand. Frisbee tweeted at us about this too. I've seen ACC folks like, let's go get Penn State and whoever else. That makes no sense, because you're going to lose money if you're Penn State to jump down to the ACC, which is a division league, whatever you want to call it, lower than the Big Ten currently is. Why would that happen? That would not happen.
You mean like from a football standpoint?
Yeah. If Penn State were to lead, like that being thrown out there doesn't make sense to me. No. But I'm not going to say never to anything right now, because I don't know what any of these. Would it shock me if Clemson and Penn State end up in a league together? No. They would shock me less, I guess, than if Penn State just went to the ACC. There's so many moving parts. Every league and every team has to figure out what's best, right? The Big 12 leagues, the teams say they're sticking together, but there are reports out there that some are already out talking to other people. You have to.
Oh, they don't have a choice. You got to protect your interest.
That's right. You got to.
I think, I don't know that it's far-fetched, Darren, to think this, but you almost, or at least I almost have a sense that the next battle behind the scenes in college athletics, as far as like conferences go, probably has less to do with the SEC and maybe more to do with the Big Ten and the ACC.
Mm-hmm.
Because you almost like, let me throw this out there, and I'm not saying that it will happen or that it can't happen. I have no idea, but like, and I get it, they're in the ACC except for football. But if you're the Big Ten, I think it's kind of ludicrous to not have the conversation with Notre Dame and say, look, we'll help buy you out of your ACC tie-in with football and your ACC partnership as far as the rest of your sports go, and make you a full-time member of the Big Ten. In addition to that, we're also going to go after Oklahoma State or Iowa State or something of that. I mean, we're only thinking from a football standpoint here. Kansas adds essentially no value outside of basketball, but the ACC might be willing to concede football to bring basketball in for a number of reasons. I'm not sure. I don't really know, but my point is we're in this arena now where we're kind of starting to figure out what makes more sense as things are changing, because they're clearly changing. I think more of these institutions and the leagues themselves, of course, are beginning to evaluate more their value now and where they are and what their value could be by virtue of change A versus change B versus change C in the future.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to know because we didn't see this coming. Obviously, it's been in the works for a while, this Texas, Oklahoma, and the SEC thing. So what else is in the works? What don't we know about, right? If you can't convince me that basically everybody who mattered in the SEC knew about this, and those extreme higher-ups involved at ESPN knew about this, and yet certain folks in other places didn't know about this at all, you can't convince me of that. Certainly not. So the wheels are probably in motion in other places, and now you're speeding up. The fact that there are new conference commissioners all across the landscape, except in the SEC, that matters. How are they going to react? We have no idea. We don't really know who they are. We don't know how they're going to act. That's another question that's out. I think everything is on the table. As I said to a group of friends yesterday, my mindset amongst all of this, because I know, right, the purebreds, I love everything the way it used to be. This is hard to stomach because the game is changing like to a point where it will be a drastically different game. So my point was just enjoy it, right? You're Clemson fan, you're Michigan fan, root for your team, enjoy it. The nostalgia here, there's not going to be any place for it. You're just like the teams in the leagues, right? You get on board and enjoy this ride, or sorry, man, like you're going to get left behind.
Yeah, I mean, it's my hope that if there is major movement and major realignment in the sport of college football, that they will accommodate a structure that allows teams to a reasonable chance at being successful, if that makes sense. I mean, you can't make all these changes and then still only have a 4-team playoff or something like that. It doesn't work. It doesn't fit. I mean, essentially, you could fill the 4-team playoff every year with just 4 SEC teams, or 3 SEC teams in Clemson. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. Or 3 SEC teams in Ohio State. You know what I'm saying? So, like, if you're going to go big, which I agree with somebody here just a little bit ago said, bigger is not always better. There's truth in that. But bigger might be different, and it could be better if the structure fits it. And if your teams like West Virginia or NC State or South Carolina or Wake Forest or whomever, but your names aren't Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, Oklahoma, probably Georgia, LSU, things like that. If you're that kind of blue collar, middle class type program that's trying to battle your way to the top half of your league, and it takes a lot of effort and a long time to be able to do that, finding the right formula. What I don't want to see is a structure of football that basically gives these programs and these fan bases no hope to ever be on that level. You want to see something that is restructured where these teams, if we can tweak a few things here and there, we can still go out and recruit and, we utilize the transfer portal or whatever, we might have a chance to get into the playoff. And then who knows what can happen once you get there. And that's, if that's where it's headed, that's fine. As long as there's a reasonable chance for programs to be able to essentially, Darren, control their own destiny without the system in place, keeping them at bay.
Yeah. And the part of the problem here, if I was a school president, part of the problem is what you said, you don't know what you don't know and what others have worked out. All you can do is plan for something in a bigger picture of, it's not the Power 5 breaking away like we've been talking about for 2 years, it feels like, since we started the show, or a year and a half, whatever. It's not the Power 5 breaking away. It's a select group of them creating something and taking that and breaking away.
Yeah.
So if you're a school president, if you're an athletic director, whatever that might become, you just have to position yourself to be a part of that. And the hard thing is, you've got an idea, but if the best way I can describe it is that, a group that have separated themselves, it's hard. How do you best position yourself for an unknown end game?
Yeah, I don't know. There's reports out there now, Darren, that Cincinnati has been in talks with Realignment, and they're, hoping that the Big Ten will have a serious discussion with them. I got bad news for them. I'm sure they're aware of this. Ohio State is in that same state. I don't know that Ohio State would be thrilled about Cincinnati popping themselves into the Big Ten. But again, we don't know. The Big Ten could end up being the Big Ten / Big 12.
It's already the 11. It's already got a Big Ten with an 11 in its logo. I mean, who cares?
Exactly. I mean, you just don't know. We're at a really strange point in college sports, and we're about a month away from college football kicking off, and this is the conversation. Wow. Wild. All right, the United States is second in the medal count. I think they have 14 was my last count. Swimming certainly has been very, very good to the U.S. thus far. The men's basketball team isn't very good, but that's all right. They're 4 medals behind China. China leads it with 18. And again, the U.S. right there at 14, Japan with 13. But the U.S. just 1 gold medal behind the Chinese. They've got 7. Oh, excuse me, behind the Japanese. Japanese have 8 gold medals. The U.S. has 7, and China has 6. So in just a little while, we'll kind of give you a little bit more of an update on what's on tonight's agenda that you can watch if you have been watching the Olympics on television. Which, by the way, Michael Phelps, I have really liked listening to his stuff. He's been great, man.
There was excitement last week when it was announced. I heard it in your voice. I heard it from some other people. I was really cautious. Like I had no idea what Michael Phelps would be on TV. I think he's been excellent. I really do. I think it's been great.
Dude, he's been awesome. Yeah, he's been awesome, man. It's been great. Great coverage. All right, time for a timeout. This guy covers the Gamecocks pretty well. Wes Mitchell with Gamecock Central. He'll join us next right here on the JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen.
This is Mike Mazzell for Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road with exciting news. It's springtime and we're playing ball. Most dealerships don't have any inventory, but at Stokes Volkswagen we do. So we're playing ball on every new Volkswagen in stock. Every new Volkswagen available with 0 down. Qualified buyers can sign and drive with interest-free financing for 60 months. Remember, Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road is the fastest, easiest way to sell your car and get the most money for your trade. Plus, we'll take any trade in any condition, paid off or not. Is your credit in a slump?
Strike 2.
If you've got $500 down and you make at least $2,000 per month, our lenders can get you approved. So if you want to strike out, that's okay. But if you want to hit a home run and save on a new Volkswagen, come see us today at Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road or StokesVW.com.
$1,666 per month per 1,000 borrowed for 60 months at 0% APR with 0 down. Plus tax tag. Includes $499.50 administration fee. Subject to VCI credit approval. Expires month end.
Peace and love at Stokes VW.
Wando Power Equipment, the trusted home of Hustler zero-turn residential and commercial mowers. There is nobody more trusted in South Carolina than our friends from Wando Power Equipment. They've been providing elite commercial and residential service for over 30 years. Landscape Services have turned to their selection of Hustler zero-turn mowers like the Raptor. Bigger, stronger, faster, and the most durable Raptor Hustler has ever designed. Located on Daniel Island and online at wandopower.com. Wando Power Equipment, owned by the Price family, the home of Hustler zero-turn mowers, rentals, service, and specializing in family and friendship.
Shrimping season's back. That means local caught shrimp. That's right. Local caught shrimp back on the menu at the Dog and Duck. All 3 locations, Bell Hall, Park West, and Clements Ferry Road, now featuring once again local caught hand-breaded shrimp, plus other daily specials like the Game Day Burger every Wednesday, Rib Night on Friday, rotating taps all the time, and all the TVs you can possibly imagine for whatever you want to watch. The Dog and Duck in Bell Hall, Park West, and on Clements Ferry Road.
Hey everybody, what's going on? This is singer-songwriter Patrick Davis, and I might live in Nashville, but whenever I want to keep up with the South Carolina Gamecocks or even the Clemson Tigers, I can still tune in to JB and Goldwater because they are always live, loud, and online.
And I sing hallelujah. I do believe this happened. We're almost.
All right, 12:34 Monday afternoon. Welcome back to the JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen, July 26th. It's the final Monday in July. Next month, there will be college football games being played. They should all look the same this year, boys and girls, but might be changing moving forward. Hopefully we don't have a shuffling of media members the way that we're seeing college athletics department shuffle themselves. Wes, are you planning to commit yourself to a future with Gamecock Central?
I am. I believe I have a contract that says I'm very well locked into Gamecock Central. So no shuffling around there.
Okay, we'll report that, Darren, if you'll put that out. And
I mean, it depends. If the JB and Goldwater show has ESPN money and they want to reshuffle the landscape and we want to pull reporters from everyone that we use, create our own conglomerate, we'll see.
Wait, so do y'all have ESPN money?
No.
Well, we're not there yet. Maybe about $100 billion short, but that's okay. All right, Wes. So we'll get to some Carolina stuff here in a second, but I will ask you. I don't know if you're working on this or not, but with this realignment conversation that's being had, it's coming. We can see that clearly now. What do you think the impacts will be to South Carolina specifically?
Yeah, I think the two obvious ones are it helps South Carolina tremendously in as far as money goes. I mean, you're not making this move if you're the SEC without it bringing in another, I mean, who knows, $10, $20 million per year per school. So, I think that's a situation where if you're looking at it from a facility standpoint, you're looking at it from the actual university standpoint, you're going to be able to bring in more money. The other side is it makes an already difficult task even more difficult. So obviously, it'd be one thing if this was happening in 2011 when South Carolina was just rolling right along. It's another when you're in the middle of what Shane Beamer does not like to call a rebuild, but I think it's a rebuild. And you're trying to find that upward mobility, and now you have two schools that just from we on Gamecock Central we talk about a logo a lot. These two logos are above South Carolina on the pecking order, so it's tough now as far as getting some more exciting games. I mean, I think it'd be awesome to play Oklahoma, for South Carolina to play Oklahoma in Williams-Brice Stadium, South Carolina to play Texas in Williams-Brice Stadium. That's awesome. Your fans are going to get to come out and love that. But as far as winning the conference, it gets even more difficult. And I do think though, and there's so many different ways this thing could go. But if you continue to add more teams and you start to go to more of a pod structure as opposed to a just two divisions, that does open the door a little bit more. It gives more opportunities for a South Carolina, a Kentucky, even, I'll put Tennessee and this sort of traditionally middle of the pack SEC schools. Maybe you give them a little bit more chance to win a trophy if you have, these 4-team pods as opposed to just divisions. And then, you have to figure out who represents your conference in, in a title game and all that stuff. You can figure all that out. But yeah, as you have on the screen right now, that gives you some opportunities there to actually take home a trophy if you're going to award trophies for every pod. And, ultimately some people believe, guys, that this is headed to like an NFL style deal where you're, if you have a 20-team conference, but then 5-team divisions, 4 or 5-team divisions in there, you're going to have some opportunities still to take home some trophies, which I think is also valuable to the schools and stuff, because it's not good whenever if there's not opportunities for teams to win meaningful games,
right, then
you sort of lose the point of the entire thing, I think.
Totally agree. I totally agree. Darren and I were talking about this earlier. There are so many schools out there that I think you could put in what we might call even though Gamecocks were not good last year, Wes, I get it at 2-8, but you could put them historically in the middle class, NC State and Wake Forest and, programs like that. Iowa State, they've been really good lately. You don't want those programs. Like if you're a Gamecock fan or you play football at South Carolina, you don't want to feel totally defeated about your future. It needs to be something that is encouraging for where you fit in the model of college football. And you just have to wonder if this is the road it's going down. And we've already talked about this 12-team playoff. Is that on the table to maybe change again?
Yeah, and man, I think I thought that Bill Connolly from ESPN had an outstanding point. Since 2009, this is all from him. Since 2009, the following teams in the Big 12 have won more games than Texas: Oklahoma State, TCU, Kansas State, Baylor, and West Virginia. And it doesn't matter because Texas can still literally blow up. I mean, Texas and Oklahoma leaving, that essentially sets off the countdown to the bomb that blows up that conference if they do not have a reaction and way to save themselves, basically. So if you're one of those teams, you've outplayed Texas on the field. If you're, Iowa State had I believe it had to be their best finish in football history. Didn't matter because Texas isn't even a good football program right now. And still that logo carries enough weight that they're able to essentially set off a ticking time bomb in their own soon-to-be former conference. So it does, it's as far as the future of the sport, I don't want to be dramatic, but you want the results on the field to actually matter, at some point. So it is kind of crazy that Texas still has all this power when they haven't even won as of late. Oklahoma, at least Oklahoma is knocking on the door of the playoff or in the playoff pretty much every year. But I'm with you, man. If we fast forward to who knows, I don't know how far you got to go down the line, but if we're talking about actual true super conferences where you're talking about 20 teams in a conference, then yes, I think maybe you have your 4 pods or your 4 divisions, and the winners of all of your pods within each conference play each other, and that starts the playoff. And then the winners of those games win your conference championship could actually be a part of the playoff, right? The winners. So you had all those teams playing each other. The first round is the first round of the playoffs. Then the winner of those will play each other to win the SEC, win the Big Ten, whatever it may be. And then all of them go to the next level to ultimately crown a championship. And maybe it's just all tied together. Potentially it's a little more NFL style in that sense, I think.
Yeah, that's what I said early in the show. Like the whole pod thing, just because I think the name pod sounds weird to me. But if you've got here's a group and here are pods in this group, and here's my other massive thing over here, conference, whatever you want to call it, and here are pods in this group. And last week we were talking about the NFL format. Like, well, there it is. You got the AFC, the NFC, you got your divisions, play it out. And that's whatever number, that's where this is all going.
No, I agree. And I mean, at some point, I think we can still call them divisions, right? Like they are. I mean, that's the NFL. They are. I just think pods. People have used pods to differentiate from the sort of 2-division format that you have right now within each conferences. But it's again, it's divisions in the NFL, so it's divisions in Major League Baseball. I think you still call them divisions, and ultimately, but it is way more manageable if you tell South Carolina, hey, you have to beat out these 3 programs or these 4 programs in your pod/division. You actually have a chance to any given year to win something, to put a trophy in the case. If you have a 8-team division and only 1 team's winning that every year and 7 teams are losing, then what are the ramifications for head coaches whose fans all think they're going to win?
Right.
You have to give some more. I'm not talking about participation trophies. It's going to be well earned, but you have to give some opportunities there for teams to be able to hang some banners, right? Which is probably a great segue into our next conversation.
Yeah, that's on the agenda. Yeah, there's no question. Yeah, I know. How would you like to be in the SEC West and you got to beat Oklahoma and Bama and LSU and A&M every year to win it. Whew, good luck. We'll see, Wes. We'll see. Before you get to that, Banner, one final question, and then we'll get there. We're getting there.
You start, Wes. You did. Hey. You started this. You did.
Well, I
didn't start nothing.
Hey, we're getting there. Change is inevitable, and more than likely, it's going to be here sooner than 2025. No matter whether they're pods or divisions or whatever, this league is going to be tougher, Wes, and you're going to have to, if you're a blue collar middle class team, Kentucky, South Carolina, Missouri, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, programs like that, you're going to have to do you've got a major job on your hands to get your program up there, because moving forward, it's only going to be about Alabama and LSU and Georgia and Oklahoma and Texas and Auburn and you know how it goes. How when you bring Shane Beamer into this here, he hadn't coached one game yet at South Carolina. Does this kind of firm up that feeling even more of we got the right guy in place here in Columbia, South Carolina to lead our program through this league transition?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, it's gonna make it more difficult, frankly. But it gives you, if you're South Carolina, an opportunity here to move up. You're still in the best conference. I think my big takeaway also is that if the SEC is not resting on any laurels here. Like there's no we're the SEC. There's no stubbornness here of we're the SEC. Everybody else can change. They can chase the power the super conferences, I should say. We're just going to stay the same. It's no, we have the lead and we are trying to lap you, as opposed to just hang tight and chill with our lead here. So, I think if you're sitting there and you're South Carolina individually, it does make it tougher. But also, as far as the resources you're going to have, if you're Shane Beamer, you already have resources. You're going to have even more. And it's just about, I think the thing for South Carolina, you have to try to find an efficiency advantage. Like be creative, which I think Beamer is very creative and very well organized. They're two of his greatest strengths, I believe. Find an efficiency advantage where you can move up, whether that's on the field, off the field, whatever it is, whether it's in recruiting, evaluations. That's what you have to do if you're South Carolina. And if you're the fan base, you have to be patient, because it's one of those things where it's not going to be easy. But if you do get there, the reward of being at the top of this conference is completely different than probably any other conference. I think it just means more.
Let me ask you both this. It crossed my mind, and it's a dangerous thing to bring up. It crossed my mind, and Nathan actually texted to us. Are the Gamecocks totally in? If this thing blows up to say 40 or 45, 50 teams, is there a chance the Gamecocks are not in that group?
No. I mean, if you're at the party, I don't think you're getting kicked out, right? No.
That's my thought now, right? I haven't heard any whispers of it, but it crossed my mind.
I mean, is this conversation strictly football, or is it?
Well, if we all athletics, I think the conversation we're having is strictly football. It wouldn't shock me. I mean, there'll be some conference movement and stuff, but if we go to some divisional NFL like 40, 50 team thing, it'll be a football thing, and basketball and the other sports will probably function similar to as they have. That's my guess.
I don't think I'm with Wes. I can't imagine a scenario. I mean, we're talking about would they kick Vanderbilt out? I don't think they would.
Same question, right? Yeah. It's still the same question, and you can have that question with every major conference out there, right? If the Pac-12, I don't know, if the Big Ten expands, right, and the Big Ten goes to some matching the SEC, say they both go to 20, 24, whatever the number might be, is Rutgers safe? Is Maryland safe? I don't know. It's just a question.
I just don't think you can do business. I mean, then you have to replace them with somebody, So I don't fall.
I don't know.
I just don't think you don't want to be in that business of, well, you're not good enough for us. Get out of here. Because what if Carolina wins? I mean, it's not going to happen unless Wes says it is. But what if they win 10 games this year? Where's this conversation then? You know what I mean?
You're right.
I mean, what if Alabama wins 2 games this year?
Kick them out.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only teams that are truly in danger are the ones that are in a conference that are in danger right now, because you may wake up and the Big 12 may no longer exist. And as we've seen, this stuff moves very, very quickly as far as the public goes. That was a master class from Texas and Oklahoma in operating behind the scenes and no one else knowing what was going on. I mean, I don't know how that happened without some people like to talk. Like, how do you have that rumor in your pocket and not mention it sitting at the bar with your butt? Like how did that stay quiet for as long as it did? I don't understand. But I mean, it is just a question. Oh, could they kick somebody out? But I mean, I don't think there's any evidence to suggest that it should be a question. I think it's something Clemson fans probably like to suggest on Twitter and make it a conversation.
I don't see it happening. What's interesting about all that, we got Mike Morgan coming up here just a little bit too, and I'll have some fun with him about this because he's, being a national media guy, he hears it from every angle. I can only imagine what was going through Sankey's head last week when that report broke. He was probably like, "You got to be freaking kidding me! We've been doing this for 7 months, not a peep, and here we are in the grandest stage of all." And
on
by
Texas
the way,
A&M's day.
That's right. Oh.
Hey, it was great publicity for the conference. I'll say that. I mean,
absolutely.
Texas A&M. I mean, and I agree with the theory. Texas A&M probably leaked it. But yeah, if I'm the SEC, it got out, but eventually it was going to. Let's just bring more eyeballs to our conference. I mean, doesn't it seem like the SEC always finds a way to be the thing everybody's talking about?
Just means more. Right? All right. Well, how much does it mean to get the color right on this banner? So they hang this thing up there. So let me hold on. Let me read something here. And Darren, Wes, you probably know what I'm reading to be true. So just bear with me here. Pop that picture up there, Darren.
Yes, sir.
All right. So this banner hangs this weekend. This Wes Mitchell guy posted it out there. I see it and I go, that's probably the sunlight. The sun's probably up high. It's not hitting down low. Well, that's not true. It's definitely the color of. It's not even garnet. It's just off. All right. So here's a statement. So Signorama is involved in this. Okay, but they hung it, and they were hired to install the banner.
Yes.
It was printed by a national vendor who's done these in the past, along with all their indoor graphics. Never any problems or any. Signorama's installed all those as well. Never any issues. And Signorama, from this statement I have from somebody with the company, says that they took this very personal. Like they were as upset about this as anybody. So they'll get it right. They've talked with Coach Beamer. They've talked with Coach Tanner. They're going to get it right. For those, I had to correct somebody on Twitter the other day blaming Coach Tanner. Coach Tanner doesn't print banners. The athletics department does approve them, but let me tell you something. When they approve it, it's a graphic that they see, and you approve it, and then it goes to print, and then they unroll that thing, and that's what it looks like. So you can't blame this one on Coach Tanner. You might want to. You could maybe blame gas prices on Coach Tanner or something if you'd like, but not this. So what's the latest? What are they doing? They going to fix it?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be fixed. Here's the thing, y'all. And I know way more about the banner process now than I ever cared to know or ever figured I would know. But it was weird how many people wanted to know about this thing. And I posted the picture on Twitter because everybody was talking about this. Hey, a new banner's coming up. I was like, that'll be good content. People want to hear that or see that. And I was trying to give Signorama, because they're a local company, Gamecock fans. I think they read Gamecock Central. I was trying to just give them a little love. But I've been like, hey, local companies hanging this thing.
That's right.
So, yeah, to reiterate, Signorama, they literally – I had people arguing with me on Twitter on Saturday night. I was trying to visit my grandma, and I'm arguing on Twitter with people like, oh, you're just taking up for this company. I'm like, why what would I be sitting here on my Saturday Twitter like making up stuff to support a company? Like, I'm not making this up. First of all, as you said, Signorama hung the banner. And here's the thing. There is a proof for the banner, right? And I've seen the proof because somebody said, hey, look, just if anybody questions you, this is what it looks like on the screen.
Yep.
And first of all, if you see the banner in person, I actually, when it unrolled, I wasn't like, oh, that looks awful. It looks good. The problem is garnet is a color that A, it fades, B, it looks different on different sources, on different materials. C, the sign above it has been up there for like 10 years, I think. So you're always you always have a moving target with garnet. And the thing is, it is a mesh banner. It has to be so that there's some level of the wind being able to blow through it. Well, if you look at the mesh banners, for example, the one that used to be over the tunnel where the players come out, light shines down through it, and there's room for light to shine up through it, so it gives it a lighter color. When you hang mesh on a dark background like the stadium and the light can't actually shine through it, it gives it a darker complexion, basically. So the problem is, and I had to explain this on Gamecock Central, when there is a banner that is that big, you cannot – it's not like you hang a poster at your house.
That's right.
Where you roll it out and look at it and then you put it on your wall. Literally, when it unrolls, that's your first time seeing it. So it unrolls, you see it. And again, everybody there was like, man, it looks pretty good. Well, then the Twitter backlash is too dark. So yeah, it's gonna be fixed. It's gonna be fine. The proof is lighter. But I was talking to somebody over there as well. I was like, think about this. There are people that are online excited to see this new banner. That means you have a fan base. You have people that care.
That's true.
Good point.
If people care about a banner being unrolled, then people truly care. Like it is a core thing. There was somebody else that stopped on the side of the road that was not there for professional reasons to just see what it was going to be because they saw it was about to be unrolled. Just a random Gamecock fan stopped to watch them open the banner. The in-house media folks for South Carolina were there videoing them doing it because they were going to post a video of the banner being unrolled as well. So, and the reason for all that is because people care. Now, the problem is if that shade is any off compared to what people think it should be or want it to be, people care. So you got you got both sides of it. So I mean, I get it.
Is it still going to be garnet? Or will it be black or?
I believe it'll be garnet, but I guess I can't say that for sure.
The firestorm around all of it. Like I saw your initial tweet and I was like, oh, okay, cool. Looks good. And moved on with my life. And then when I saw it later in the day and I was like, oh God, look what Wes created. Look at my first thought.
Wes did not create this.
Like, no, my first thought was about you. I felt bad. I was like, your phone must be just exploding in your pocket for nothing. And nothing. We'll get it right.
It'll be fine. It'll be fine.
They'll get it fixed.
But I told everybody on Twitter, August 1, they're cut off from all this. Like,
yeah, it's football time.
You got to start complaining about like football things,
tight ends, and
yes,
how many passes are we throwing to the tight end, things like that. Yeah, I get totally get. I will say this in reference to the if it stays garnet, because the easy fix, as we all know, Wes, is just make it black. Just make it black and move on. It from what I guess I would say I'm hearing, there seems to be a garnet theme coming a little bit more back into the program. So for whatever that's worth for fans to get excited about or whatever. All right, final minute here. There is believe it or not, there's actually some other things going on. They're going to have a cookout this coming week. Can you confirm some of the bigger names that will be there? I think this is kind of the final big recruiting activity of the summer before practice starts.
Yeah, this week is open as far as visits go. One final week that is open. For the most part, the cookout's going to be a lot of the guys that are committed to South Carolina, an opportunity for them to get out there and hang out. It's going to be laid back. It's not like a recruiting event where you're really going to be recruited hard. It's more about relationships, continuing relationships. And I'm trying to find Chris was working on this earlier today. He put out some names. Marky Anderson from down the road in Dorman, Dillon's Josiah Thompson. I believe we'll have to reconfirm, but I believe Cam Pringle was in line to visit. Xavier McLeod from Camden, the underclassman defensive tackle. DeAndre Martin, who's the kid from Virginia originally, a defensive lineman that South Carolina's recruiting for the 2022 class. It's actually ended up being a pretty heavy O-line, D-line. I guess if you roll out the barbecue, then the big uglies just show up. So I guess that makes sense, right?
Absolutely. But no Oscar Delp. He was in Clemson this weekend. He's not attending the Gamecocks event this coming weekend or Georgia's. And the thought, Wes, to wrap up here, is that it still seems to be a Dogs Gamecocks battle, correct?
Yeah, that's the belief. Clemson was able to get him back in because he really had not seen Clemson near as much as he had seen South Carolina and Georgia. That was sort of their pitch, according to our friends at Tiger Illustrated. Hey, you've given the other schools a chance. We want a chance. Yeah. So he visited there. I think it's South Carolina and Georgia. I think it's been South Carolina and Georgia. I think it's very, very close, y'all. The fact that he didn't pick a cookout to go to, I think that tells you it's going to be hard for him to say no to both of them, like to either one. I mean, so we'll see. Now, it maybe goes into the season, right? If it goes into the season, all the more important for South Carolina, A, to compete, and B, to throw to the tight end. I'm still pushing. I want to see the debut of the 5 tight end personnel. Right. I think it could actually work. I'm ready to see that.
We might, based on what they've got at wide receiver. We might. We will talk more about personnel next week. Some interesting notes up there. I would check out Gamecock Central. An interesting little nugget Wes popped out about Tonka Hemingway as well. I would keep your eyes peeled on him. GC Live at 2:00 today, correct?
Correct. We'll be there to talk about banners.
I got a feeling that this is going to be a pretty wild hour for y'all between 2 and 3 o'clock. So you and Chris strap up and get ready to go, and we'll be paying attention as always. Wes, thanks, brother. Have a wonderful week, and next week we'll maybe actually talk football. How about that?
That sounds good. And by the way, be on the lookout. I saw somebody in here wanting me to release some GC party info. Be on the lookout. Hopefully that'll be out today. And Cox by 90. And we might be working on some live music, maybe from someone that you guys are pretty that y'all know pretty well. He maybe even does some of your cuts here on the show.
I might know him. Yeah.
So be on the lookout for that, y'all.
Might know him a little bit. Yeah. He's a good guy. He's a really, really nice guy. He's got good hair like you too. He's in the good hair club.
So be on the lookout, y'all. That's called a tease.
Ooh. Dead giveaway.
Very suspenseful.
Dead giveaway. Thanks, Wes.
Thanks, y'all. Have a good one.
Wes Mitchell, Gamecock Central. Timeout. Mike Morgan up next on the JV and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen.
Mike Morgan here for Gamecock Traditions. Baseball is going strong. You'll want to look sharp when you cheer on your Gamecocks. Under Armour, New Era, sideline hats, all with interlocking SC Baseball logo. 18 styles of $10 tees exclusively at Gamecock Traditions. Get on that email list by going to the bottom of the page, enter your email, and always be the first to know about new items as they arrive. You can also add a little Gamecock flair with house signs, garden flags, interior and yard decorations, only at one place, Gamecock Traditions.
At Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum, families walk in the footsteps of our nation's heroes, the brave ones who risked their lives to defend our way of life. Home to the aircraft carrier USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, and the USS Clamagore, there's more than 1 million square feet of exhibit space to roam. White Glove certified, we have several new health safety measures in place to enhance the visitor experience. Come for the day and leave feeling inspired. One of the most impressive museums in the country, located right here in Mount Pleasant. Visit patriotspoint.org for more. We'll see you soon.
Bourbon and whiskey drinkers of Charleston, Paddock and Whiskey on James Island and the Terrace Shopping Center on Maybank is your home for the finest and rarest bourbon and whiskey drinks in the Lowcountry. This is where I hang out. Go meet my friends Reed and Chris and try one of their exclusive barrel pick bourbons. They have the largest private barrel collection in the state, and let their knowledgeable staff recommend your next pour. PaddockandWhiskey.com. Let not your heart be troubled. Paddock and Whiskey is here for your next double. We're all friends around here. Paddock and Whiskey, proud partners of the JB and Goldwater Show.
This is Scott Glaze, head golf professional at the Links at Stono Ferry, located on the outskirts of Charleston, South Carolina. I'm inviting you to tee it up on one of the most scenic and challenging courses in the Lowcountry. Our back nine is highlighted with 3 holes that border the Intercoastal Waterway. Visit StonoFerryGolf.com to book tee times and discover all that Stono Ferry has to offer. The Links at Stono Ferry is a former South Carolina Golf Course of the Year and is also home to the College of Charleston men's and women's golf teams. Come see us. We would love to have you. StonoFerryGolf.com.
Hi, I'm Chris Half, Public Information Officer at the Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum. We're home of the mighty USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, Clamagore, and Vietnam experience. And we're a proud partner of the JB and Goldwater Show. We invite you and your family to come see us and enjoy a day on Charleston Harbor. Visit patriotspoint.org for more information. And now, it is my honor to present the National Anthem.
Live, loud, and online.
All right, final hour on this Monday afternoon. Welcome back to the JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen, stokesvw.com. Make sure you've downloaded the JB and Goldwater app. It's free, and you can watch and listen to us daily. You can always head to jbandgoldwatershow.com and follow us on social media at JB and Goldwater, individually at Sports Media JB and at Darren Goldwater. Thanks to our good buddy Wes Mitchell. His colleague Collyn Taylor coming up at about 1:40 this afternoon. Got some Carolina baseball notes to plug in there. By the way, Dawn and Asia are in the Olympics. We'll get a little update on that as well, and a couple other little football notes to tag to the end of our program. We'll be out of here. But first, one of the most well-traveled, great voices of all time, Mike Morgan. Hey, Mike.
Nice introduction, gentlemen. I got to tell you, I've missed you guys. It's been a while. This is our longest respite of doing this segment. I was starting to wonder if I'd been
replaced by another mascot. I didn't know. maybe Philly the Fanatic was doing a weekly hit. I didn't know. So it's good to know that I'm still invited into the great graces of JB and Goldwater.
I figured when he introduced you the way he did, that's why you were coming back. You needed that ego bump once again.
I did.
Yeah.
I did. It's I don't get that positive reinforcement because I'm not doing games right now. Usually I get some of that when I'm behind the mic, but I haven't been behind the mic since the Super Regional at Arkansas, and then I've got some regional Little League World Series in August.
Nice.
Which will be cool. I've done it before, so I think the 12th, 13th, 14th will be on ESPN doing that, the Northeast Regional. And outside of that, that's really the only games to call before football. I know I have a week 1 SEC game somewhere, but I don't know where yet. And so I'm enjoying the time off, and but yes, it's always nice to get a little bit of positive reinforcement.
We do have a little bit to talk about, Mike, but before we do that, I didn't really even realize you were on vacation, and I guess Darren mentioned it to me maybe Friday or something. I'm not sure. And then I went and did my investigating.
Yes,
and found
deep dive.
that not only did you hit Fenway, which is fantastic, and that's on the bucket list for me, but you went to Maine. I always wanted to visit Maine. What was it like?
Yeah, so beautiful. This trip is really, we were thinking about doing this a year ago. My former co-host on the Braves post-game show, a guy named Chuck Dowdle, who's like a legend in Atlanta television. He still does. He's the analyst for Georgia Bulldogs radio basketball. He just retired from sideline football. If you ever watched a Georgia football game on TV during the coin toss, there's this 6'6" gray-haired gentleman with a microphone and wearing a Georgia Bulldog radio network. That was Chuck Dowdle for the last 10 years. Anyway, he lives in Kennebunkport now. He just decided I need a change of scenery.
Wow, that's right there on the coast, right?
Right there on the coast. It's right next to the George Bush compound.
Yes.
Which is like talking about the original, not W, but George Herbert Walker. Yeah.
That thing really kind of, it's right there. It's sticking out, isn't it? I've heard that.
Yeah, it's almost like wouldn't be an island because there is some land. What is that? A peninsula?
Yeah.
Anyway, you can't miss it. We did a whale watching tour, and when the boat goes out, you see it. And it's like 4 houses all in this isolated little area. It's beautiful. So cool. But anyway, but Chuck was telling me, if you want to come visit, and of course, COVID kind of affected all that last year. Maine was a major lockdown city, despite the fact they had some of the lowest COVID rates of anywhere in the world. But so we planned it, and we did 3 days in Kennebunkport / Wells / Ogunquit. Beautiful towns, beautiful little sleepy kind of beach towns. And then back to where we flew into, Boston, for 3 days, where we did, their version of Little Italy, which is North End, some of the best food I've ever eaten in my life. Mm-hmm. And of course, a day at Fenway and the Boston Ferry,
so cool.
Boston Harbor tour. I mean, it was just a really good trip. And yes, it was my second trip to Fenway. My fiance's first. So get this. If you've been to Fenway, Darren, you have, I think. Yeah. First off, you're not going to do better. I did Yankees Red Sox at Fenway, and I'm here to tell you, it doesn't get any better than that. It just doesn't. And I'm not, I've always liked the Boston teams, but I'm not a diehard Red Sox fan. I certainly don't like the Yankees, but when the opportunity came, and my agent also represents Dave O'Brien, who's the TV voice of the Red Sox. So he helped, let's just say, the accommodation side. So we were sitting in a really good spot, third base side, to be able to do that. So we go to the bleacher bar before. The bleacher bar is actually kind of connected to the stadium on the third base side. and it's your typical sports bar, but there's one little spot with 3 tables where there's a sliding door that was up before the game, where you can sit and you're literally looking out to the field and you're watching guys warm up and do all this stuff. And we got there especially early to grab one of those tables. So long story short, my fiance, who's never been to a Red Sox game before, she says, "Who's that?" And I said, "Well, that's the Red Sox manager. I'm like, that's Alex Cora." And she goes up to take a picture. Well, Cora, who's all the way out near the first baseline, the opposite side of the field, spots her, starts jogging over, and while my fiance is video recording this, and we have this all on tape, he says, turn it around, we'll take a selfie. So my fiance got a selfie with Alex Cora before the game started. Like, are you serious? He wanted no part of me.
Yeah,
he just saw the rather attractive blonde and said, "Yeah, I'll take a selfie with you." So that was her experience right off the bat. Anyway, the game was extra innings. It was a walk-off in the 10th. Sweet Caroline, 35,000. Yankees suck. Boston sucks. I mean, it was just it's incredible. Really is. I think every Major League Baseball fan should go to that rivalry one time in their life.
Or just fan of sports in general.
Yeah, absolutely.
Experience a rivalry like that. Well, I'm glad you had a great time. I mean, it really is neat. I saw some of the pictures and I thought, that damn Mike, because I've wanted to go to Maine forever, and you go everywhere that I want to go. So,
well, I'd never been. Yeah, it's beautiful. You'd love it. I'll give you a whole things to do list when you decide to make that trip, and Boston for that matter.
Was it hard to find the whales, or is there like a guaranteed success rate when you take these trips?
No, they tell you there's no guarantees with Mother Nature. It's not like, they go to Shamu and say, "Hey, I need you to pop up at about 2:30."
110, buddy.
Yeah, don't let me down on this. I promised a lot of people that you'd make a cameo. No, but we saw several. You go all the way out. You're 15 miles offshore. You got to be patient, but eventually you do see them popping out of the water, and it's pretty amazing stuff when you see it.
Very cool. Very cool. Mike Morgan, ESPN, the SEC Network. So what's more amazing, that or Texas and Oklahoma inevitably joining the SEC?
Oh, yeah. You guys have it great. I mean, I remember doing sports talk radio in July where you had 3 hours to fill. And once you got through with media days, you can only go through the preseason poll so many times. I know you're talking about Bannergate over there. You can only get so much mileage out of that. But I mean, this is a golden gift from the football gods that is just dropped in your map. I see your SEC pod list.
That's from Michael Bratton there.
Yeah,
right.
Visions.
Well, you guys are all over it. This is like the most well-produced podcast ever. I mean, I'm not kidding. I've been on a few of these things. Nobody does it this well. Where do you want to start? You tell me, because I can talk about this for an hour.
I don't even know where to start anymore. Darren and I have had the conversations from what feels like every angle that you can have them from. I guess the question of whether it's good for the league or not doesn't matter. It's inevitable. The question I have is, are they done? Is the SEC done from that side of things? Are they done with these two or not?
Well,
I don't know. I mean, they're coming. So
I think. Look, I've been wrong on this before, so I'm not gonna. I don't think all the talk about 18 to 20. Like, I don't think that's really what they're thinking about right now in Birmingham. I think they got their golden goose, and what this does is. It doesn't matter what everybody else does. It doesn't matter what the ACC, the Big Ten, the Pac-12 does. They have solidified themselves even further as the premier conference in college athletics. And I say athletics because it's not just football. Oklahoma and Texas at everything. Yeah. They are good in basketball almost every year. They're good in baseball every year. They're good at Olympic sports. So, I mean, this is it's like they check every single box imaginable. You already expanded the footprint. I've gotten to know Greg Sankey fairly well. He is he is a extremely bright individual, and we don't need to revisit who won the day in managing COVID and who was an abject failure in terms of conference commissioners. But what I've also learned about Greg Sankey, he would be a great poker player. Think about this. We just find out that for the last year and a half, whatever it's been, Greg Sankey and Bob Bowlesby were two of the main figures constructing this expanded playoff.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, Greg Sankey is negotiating, so to speak, the addition of Oklahoma and Texas, which is going to potentially sink Bob Bowlesby's Big 12 conference. Think about that. I mean, you're having a nice meal at one of the hotel airports that you're visiting during COVID, and you're talking about how do we get from 4 to 12, which I admit did not think it would happen, but it all makes sense to me now. And this is where, again, Greg Sankey's he's always a step ahead. Why and how does Greg Sankey go from a 4 is the number, we don't need to talk about expansion, to let's triple that and go to 12? Because I believe if Oklahoma and Texas knew that the 4-game playoff was going to remain intact, they're not going, because in all likelihood, they're going to get shut out, because neither Oklahoma or Texas are at the level of the SEC champion every year. How do we know this? Well, the Big 12 hasn't won a single playoff game in a 14 playoff. But if you expand it to 12, the SEC is going to get probably minimum 4 every year, sometimes 5, maybe half the field. So Oklahoma and Texas actually, in a way, increase their chances of getting to the playoff. And I believe, to circle back to Texas, because here is lazy sports talk take. Well, it's all about the money. I tell you, it's all about the money. Okay. Yes, they're going to make money. But Texas wasn't struggling for cash the way it is. Okay, if there's one advantage and if there's one reason why the Big 12 has stayed at 10 is because there's only 10 pieces of the pie, and they actually get, both Texas and Oklahoma, Tier 3 rights, and you got the Longhorn Network. So it's the only conference. They're making more money than every other school in their own league. And it's not like based on ticket revenue, it's based on the distribution. Whereas the SEC, it's fairly 14 equal parts of the pie. So it's not all about the money. This is Texas, in my estimation, kind of waving the white flag, saying, if you can't beat them, join them. We are not competing right now with the SEC. We are not even close to being on that level. And quite frankly, Oklahoma could say the same thing, even though they've been in the playoff a bunch. They haven't won a single playoff game. The Big 12 hasn't won a single playoff game. And it's Texas saying, we need to rebrand, we need to reboot, because it's not working. Some of the people that ran Texas 20 years ago, they're gone. This is a new order. This is not a cash grab. That's not why they're doing this. It's going to take a while for them to, there's still a lot of creative accounting that has to go into this to even get to what they're making now in the Big 12, right? Because you've got to split it again, 16 teams, that's 16 pieces of the pie, 16 mouths to feed as opposed to 10. But that's not why they're doing it. So lazy sports talk host take, it's all about the money, just follow the money. That's not to me what this is all about. In time, sure, they're going to make more money. And this is about, we're getting beat in recruiting. We're not in the same level as the SEC. And we play in a league that, quite frankly, has no buzz, no sizzle, nothing. We thought that maybe being the kings of that league could support that. But for 10 years, Texas has been not good. It started with the hire of Charlie Strong, which I could have told you was going to fail. Having covered Charlie at South Carolina, Charlie's a good man and a good coach, but he doesn't like having to deal with a lot of the things you have to deal with for a job like that. Tom Herman landed completely flat. So for 10 years, they've tried. They hired the hot coach, still didn't work. They got their own network, still doesn't work. Everything they've done, logical moves, hadn't worked. Mm-hmm. So this is not, well, we can make an extra $5 million a year if we join the SEC. That's nothing to that's pennies. This is, we got to try something different. And that's what this move does for them. And that's what it does for Oklahoma. What it does for the SEC, I already stated. So all these moves, all the motivations to me are rather obvious. Now the question becomes, what's the collateral damage? Mm-hmm. Is there a Big 12? You mentioned the ACC, the Big 10. There's no question they are working the phones right now like a Jerry Lewis telethon. But everything in the world of Texas, Oklahoma, and the SEC, it feels real good being on the top of the mountain.
Mike Morgan, ESPN, the SEC Network. Yeah, last week when this started to surface, one of probably my main talking point, Mike, and it still is today, is you have to protect your interests. But interests are different at every level. The league has different interests. The individual institutions have different interests. Fans have different interests. I mean, if you're a Gamecock fan, you don't want them because it makes your road more difficult to achieve what you want to achieve. If you're Alabama, you probably don't really care, right? So if you are different institutions, your interests are going to be different from the league. There's reports out there, Mike. I don't know how much of this is true. It may be that others either have actively been interested or were planning to express their interest in adding both Oklahoma and Texas to their leagues, maybe the ACC. If that's the case, the SEC has to protect their interests, which is staying the best league in college athletics. So you got to go get them if you can. So I say all that to say this, to your point just a moment ago. What would the interest be of the Big 12 now? Is it in their best interest to dissolve? It is in their best interest to merge? Is it in their best interest to try to add G5 teams to recreate this league? What do you think?
Or does it matter what their interest is at all?
Well,
might not.
I don't know. I don't think they know. I think there's a big, big question mark over everything you guys just pointed out. I will say so much of this could have been avoided 2 years ago when they did their little charade where they pretended like they were going to add, and they had all these programs like UCF, like Cincinnati, fly out to Dallas and put on a big presentation. And after all of that, after the end of the Star Search like talent show, they said, we changed our mind. We're not going to add anybody. We're good. Thanks for coming out. Appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed the steak. That was a mistake. They should have added Cincinnati and UCF. They should have been a 12-team league. They should have, and therefore, always had a Big 12 championship game, a la the year where they had, Baylor and TCU, both having playoff-like credentials, but they didn't have a Big 12 championship game, and neither one of those teams got in. So that's spilled milk, but it's pretty big milk. This could have been avoided. For that matter, if Texas actually played like Texas and they were making the playoff, 4 times in however many years, then I don't think this move happens either. Like I said, this is not a money move for Texas. This is a holy snap, nothing is working. We got to try something different move by Texas. It's very progressive thinking on their part. And when you've got more money than God, you don't make moves just based on making an extra $5-10 million a year. Again, Texas spits that out on a regular basis like it's nothing. So if I'm Bob Bowlesby, I'm real nervous about what's going to happen here because on one hand, you're trying to, it's almost like recruiting in the transfer portal. Not only are you recruiting new players, you're trying to make sure you're able to keep the players you already have, right? You want to make sure they're happy. But I guarantee you, those other schools in the Big 12, they're flirting with the Pac-12. They're flirting with the Big 10, the ACC, anybody who will listen. If you're Bob Bowlesby, you're saying, okay, UCF, okay, Cincinnati, my bad. Should have done this 5 years ago, but I really mean it this time. You don't even have to go on the stage and dress up like a ballerina and juggle bowling pins. We already know you're good enough for us. We'll take you right now as is. Then you start thinking how the Houston thing is. Again, having covered that league for 4 years, why Houston's not in it is insane. But it's because the other Texas schools, TCU, Texas Tech, Baylor, will do everything in their power to stop it. Well, now you got to start thinking about your own survival. Houston needs to be in the league. It's a top 10 market. Obviously, they're old Southwest Conference rivals. You need to get them in there. Then maybe you get creative. You get a BYU in there. I think you cast a wide net and you try to get as many decent. They're not all going to be home run additions, but as many decent additions as you can get, and then try to be ultra creative. Because you are, if they're able to maintain a Big 12, you've already solidified you're number 5. You are number 5 out of the Power 5. Period. Well, if you're going to be number 5 and that's your spot in life, then at least be creative about it and do what you can to make it interesting.
Is it inevitable that we're going to what people have fallen on, like the easy thing to describe, right? The NFL model. If there's a super conference where we have one right now, we're about to. If they grow, if someone else grows, I've heard the number 40 or at least ish thrown around a couple times, including by Dabo. Is it inevitable that that's where we're going? And instead of the Power 5 breaking away, we've got 40, 50, some type number. They break away from everyone else?
I hope it's not that low a number. I mean, look, we've already been dealing with, I've maintained, and I've said this for years, and I speak as someone who has called games at Southern Miss, who has called games at FAU, who has called games at Akron on a Wednesday night on ESPN2. I've called a lot of games at Group 5 schools, not just SEC and Big 12. And I can tell you, they might be under the same heading of FBS, but that is the 1AA of college football. They don't have nearly the resources. They don't have nearly the money. They don't have nearly the television deals. They are working at such a disadvantage that it might as well be another classification of football. So in my mind, we're already there. Those are 1AA schools in effect. And the Power 5, that is Division I. The question is, of the 64, how many are able to maintain their status on that D1 island before they wake up one day and realize, I don't have a home anymore. Or my home is not the Power 5. Now it's the Mountain West. Well, guess what? That's a big difference. So, yeah, I hope we don't head to 40. I hope we can keep it as close to 64. I mean, I'd love to have it at 80, but that's not what it's going to be. That number will only get smaller as the rich get richer and these conferences become more and more select about who they want in versus who is not worthy of their Power 5 status.
We've talked so much, everybody has, about Texas. But if you're Oklahoma and we're going towards a 12-team playoff where the top 4 seeds are the highest ranked conference champions, why on earth would you want to join the SEC?
If you're Oklahoma?
From a football standpoint, yes.
Well, why wouldn't you?
The path of least resistance for them right now is in the Big 12.
Well, yeah, no, that's a good point. But look, the moment that Texas and Oklahoma has always known this, the moment Texas left the Big 12, they're on a sinking ship. So I rather than be reactive, Oklahoma's always been proactive. If there's one thing those two schools, even though they're bitter rivals, they're smart enough to know if one of them is gone, that league is doomed. So this was not done in a vacuum where like all of a sudden Texas woke up and said, let's join the SEC. And then Oklahoma said, I'm feeling bacon, eggs, toast, and SEC today. Those two collaborated on this. Make no mistake about it. They knew that this is what they wanted. And they knew it would be, to answer your question, for the same reason that Texas is leaving. I realize Oklahoma's been more successful. They're the ones that have been in the playoff. They're the ones that have had Heisman Trophy winners. They're the ones that have been winning the Big 12. But what is the Big 12 if your chief rival leaves and you're left with Oklahoma State, TCU, Iowa State, Baylor? It's just not the same. And then, again, while Oklahoma has been making the playoff, it's not as if they're winning national titles. You got a chance to be in the Premier League. And I haven't even said the R word yet for both these schools, and that is recruiting. They are both going to be able to recruit. Look at what Texas A&M has been able to do. It took a few years, but they have gotten to a point where they tell Texas kids, yeah, Texas, I get it. They're the so-called landmark institution of the state, but we're in the SEC. They ain't. That finally was getting to Texas. Well, Oklahoma, Oklahoma's has got bigger challenges being in Norman, and they're trying to recruit nationally. They can do a much better job of it, I think, in the Southeastern Conference now. So I just think for Oklahoma, you're right, it wouldn't be the path of least resistance, but it's still an overall better situation for the program as a whole.
What structure, let's say it stops here. I don't think it does, but let's say it does stop here at 16 in the SEC. What structure best fits this league as far as dividing it up, figuring out what divisions, what that's going to look like, scheduling and things of that nature? I think there's something here that the people, the faces of this sport that talk about it daily, Mike, they're only going to reference Oklahoma and Texas and Alabama, Georgia, Florida, and LSU and things like that. But the commissioner, although he has to worry about all of them, he has to worry about everybody. And there is a middle class of teams at Ole Miss, South Carolina, Mississippi State, Kentucky, those programs that are good years, bad years, those type guys. They have to feel like they have some type of path to success. You can't just bury them down the depth chart, so to speak, in 8 or 9 team divisions with Oklahoma, Texas, and Alabama and LSU all to go through to win your division, have a chance at an SEC championship. So what is the structure that, or a model that may best fit this league that makes it not easy, but doable to achieve the success all those blue-collar programs are looking for?
I think you have 2 questions in one there, and they're both good questions. Let's take it to the program you guys talk about the most, and one that's still near and dear to me in South Carolina. I don't think it's not as if Carolina was a fixture in Atlanta competing for SEC championships every year anyway.
Right.
So does the road get harder for South Carolina? Does it get harder for Ole Miss? Does it get harder for Missouri? Does it get harder for Mississippi State? Sure it does. But it doesn't. At the end of the day, you're kind of playing for the same stakes realistically. Those programs are still going to be fighting like hell to get to the best bowl game they can. And hopefully they have that one breakout year where they truly compete for an SEC title. But that's never been the norm before, and it's probably not going to be the norm now. So I don't know how much I don't know if the ADs of those schools woke up today and said, damn it, now we're not going to win SEC championships. You weren't winning them anyway. Right. And so are they jumping up for joy for the additions of Texas and Oklahoma? No. Again, long-term, it is going to mean more money. But I don't think they're sitting there stressed about the fact, well, now we're really going to be in the middle tier. You're already in the middle tier. You've been in the middle tier. You've absolutely been in the middle tier. So that goes to your second part of the question, which is the scheduling and do we do divisions? Do we do pods? How about this? I'll one better that. How about no divisions, period? How about the way they do it now in the Big 12 or the way we do it in SEC basketball, where it's just 16 teams, and then, you take the top 2 teams from the regular season, and those are the 2 that meet in Atlanta. I could see that as a possibility. The bigger question to me is divisions, pods, no division. What's going to have to be done here, and what a lot of people have wanted done for a while anyway, is just a complete reboot on the scheduling.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that doesn't – you could be divisions, you could be pods, you could be whatever you want to be, but people still don't like the scheduling the way it is. They don't like seeing one team visit their stadium once every 12 years. They don't like the permanent opponent. I could see the permanent opponent thing going away. I could see, I could just see now. Look, when I say that, obviously Auburn's going to play Alabama every year. Georgia's going to play Auburn every year. But does South Carolina need to play Texas A&M every year? Right? I mean, does you think Tennessee might be getting a little burnt out with playing Alabama every year in football?
Not according to Josh Heupel, they're not. But he hasn't got his rear end kicked yet. Either.
Right. That's tough talk now. Talk to me in 5 years and what the final results are of those scores, and tell me maybe it would have been better if we played Arkansas that week.
Right.
So I think that's the biggest thing that'll come out of it. But that'll take care of itself. It's not like we have a perfect model now. It's not like we have this perfect, beautiful system where everything works out and nobody's unhappy with the way the scheduling goes and everybody loves the divisions and it makes all the sense in the world to have Auburn in the West and Missouri in the East. And we already have this euphoric sense of or utopia with the no. I mean, it's not the perfect system to look at it now. So I think they can use when this happens as an opportunity to try to make it better anyway.
Final question, Mike, and then we got to let you run. But does this affect the 12-team playoff model? Or could this?
I don't think so. I mean, I think this, like I said, I think this was already in the back of everybody's mind when they went to 12. I don't think Greg Sankey all of a sudden switched his ideal of the perfect playoff from 4 to 12 on a whim. I don't think Texas and Oklahoma want to leave if we stay with a 14 playoff.
No,
I think this was already being. Well, I know it was already being. We know this was being discussed for a while. I think part of the reason why everybody is giddy about 12 is because the SEC is going to have more bids now than ever. Texas and Oklahoma get to go to the greatest conference in the land and still not decrease their chances of going to a playoff. Because think about this, with a 12-team playoff, if you're Texas or Oklahoma and you go, I don't know, 9-3, you still have a very good chance at making a 12-team playoff, right? I mean, if the 3 losses are to Alabama, at LSU, and Georgia, you're still going to the playoff in all likelihood. So, no, I think the number 12, we're not going back from that now. I think that number is going to be at least 12.
Yeah. That was my question.
You think does it jump to like 16?
Like, would they even go more or higher?
I want to say no, but again, I've been wrong on this before. I thought we were going to go to 8. So don't believe anything I say on what the number is going to be. I do think 12 that is so brilliantly put together. Like it's like I had an epiphany. This all makes sense now, right? Because you take the 6 best conference champions. That might not even be the Big 12, right? I mean, if the Big 12 stays around, they're not even guaranteed a spot at the table. You take the 6 best conference champions, then you take the 6 best at large, what have you. No, I think the way they formulated that model was brilliant. And I was not a 12-team playoff guy, but if you're going to do 12 teams, that's the way you do it.
Yeah, I said earlier when Jamie asked me that question, I was like, well, what if it's 4 conferences, right? So if there's 4 conferences instead of 5, or if there's 3, then right. Then your pool gets narrowed and your average pool grows.
And keep this in mind that the ink is not dry on that either. So if the Big 12 did dissolve, you could change those numbers around. Instead of 6 and 6, you could do 5 and 7. You could do 4 and 8. I mean, you nothing has been written down yet. So they can just as everything is fluid right now in college football. And by the way, you can't say this enough. This is the most revolutionary time in the history of college athletics. You thought one-time transfer rules. You thought NIL was big. You look at what's coming down the road. This is mammoth. It is absolutely mammoth what's going on. And I know I've heard a lot of doom and gloomers already. This is bad for college football. I don't know. I'm not there. I think this is exciting. I think this is, and maybe it's because I do obviously have some allegiance to the SEC, but I think it's a pretty damn exciting time for a lot of reasons.
I got a feeling that next week, Mike, will probably, still be talking about this. So
you think so?
We'll take notes, and whatever other questions arise, we'll pass them along to you and allow you to answer them right here.
I look forward to that, and I look forward to this being a really fun off season. And by the way, I'm looking forward to the actual season itself, because nothing's going to change for 2021. So I'm still pumped about that also.
Yeah, we'll actually talk football next week too, as camp is right around the corner, And you can always save money with Stuart Wingo, as Mike has. Mike's getting married. He's got to save all the money he can. So be like Mike.
That's why I use
refi.
But I'm in such a good mood. A number of your listeners have already talked to Stuart. Next guy that does a refi or a new mortgage, you mentioned my name. I'm coming to Charleston. I'm buying you dinner. I'm taking you out.
Oh.
I'm in a generous mood. I'm taking you to Hall's Steakhouse.
Oh,
I'm not kidding.
That might be worth a refi in and of itself.
Right
after the season.
You never know. Maybe a midweek trip. Maybe like a Tuesday through Thursday type deal.
Okay.
I like getting out. I got to get out, man. Being on the road this past week was so much fun. I've been cooped up in this office calling games for much of the year. During the pandemic, I didn't get to do a whole like this. I'm ready to go, and I need to make a trip to Charleston. This will be the final motivation I need to get over there, and we got a round of golf to play. We got things to do over there.
We can handle the golf side. I mean, we got you covered.
I know. I'm ready.
Mike, thank you so much, my friend. We'll talk to you next week. Football's back.
Yeah, sounds good, guys. Appreciate it.
Later. With Mike Morgan, powered by Wando Power Equipment. We're going to blow through our break, Darren. Let's just blow through the break here because we do have Collyn Taylor with Gamecock Central, who's been waiting patiently to pop in with us as well. And we do have a couple of things to address with him. It is South Carolina related, of course, because he works for Gamecock Central. And they have been fairly busy. Yes, with all this football talk going on, there are other things happening at the University of South Carolina, like Dawn Staley and Asia Wilson set to go late tonight in basketball. All right, Collyn, I know we're a couple of minutes late, but we got you for 15 minutes. We appreciate you popping in, brother. How are you?
I am fantastic. I'm already beginning to write my script for the SEC storied on the Vince Young Rose Bowl. I'll probably have to air during Texas Takeover days in a few years.
Wow.
So,
yeah. Good point. Didn't think about things. See, that's why we have you come on, because we don't think about things like that. All right, Collyn, real quick, I'm going to let you kind of give an overhead look at a bunch of different things going on in Gamecock country. Have no fear, though. Wes already covered Bannergate 21. We're not going to go down that road. But let's start with baseball. It's now official. Gamecocks have 2 new assistant coaches. Summarize those hires for South Carolina.
Yeah, so Chad Kaye, I believe is how you say his name, is from Texas A&M, got hired as the recruiting coordinator, has been a very integral part of the Southern Miss program and their offensive rise over the last couple of years there. Never really got a full chance to do what he wanted to do at A&M, was only there for 2 years, and one of those was the COVID year, and the next year they got fired. That staff got fired. So never really had a chance, but is known as a great recruiter, was part of a College World Series team at Southern Miss. And the offenses, I think his offenses over the last 13 years have combined to hit 290, dating back to Southern Miss and then to Texas A&M. And then Justin Parker from Indiana, very widely considered a rising star in the business, similar to kind of what Skylar Meade was. Took over a Wright State team that was not a great pitching staff, and turned them into something that was pretty formidable. Did the same thing at UCF, and then Indiana was one of the better pitching staffs in the Big Ten last year. So not only Big Ten, but over the course of the country. So 2, at least on paper, really good hires for Mark Kingston, especially from an on-field and recruiting standpoint. Fills the needs that they needed filled. And I've already kind of hit the ground running in recruiting, and very excited to see what they can kind of do over the next few weeks as they get their feet wet in Columbia.
Do you know, did Mark have previous or prior connections with these guys? Do you know?
So Kaye, I'm not sure, but I believe Lovelady or Lovelady or however you say his name at Wright State was an assistant at Miami. And Kingston obviously has ties to Miami. Parker coached under him. So I think there's some connection there to it. But I don't think there's many deep-rooted connections. But then again, he didn't have very many deep-rooted connections with Trip Couch and Skylar Meade when he hired him. So, but no, I don't think there's any kind of, they've maybe passed quietly or passed him, briefly, but nothing to where they've worked together for extended periods of time.
Okay. All right. It does appear they've made some pretty good hires, and I know that I had received a couple of questions over the last few days. What does this mean? These guys, aren't necessarily Gamecocks. Well, as far as either playing, coaching, having some type of prior connection to the school. Yeah, well, there was a time when neither did Ray Tanner, and that worked out. And neither did Skylar Meade most recently, and he's one of the best. He was one of the best pitching coaches in the country, and he's off to be a head coach. Elsewhere, though, as far as the team itself, Collyn, pretty good news last week with Julian Bosnick. I know a bunch of guys have signed, but it appears Julian Bosnick, and then also on the transfer front, they've got some experience that will be joining the roster this year in addition to Bosnick's decision.
Yeah, Bosnick's decision was absolutely massive for South Carolina. The best news they've probably gotten all offseason. After the draft, I anticipated all but one signing. Bosnick was obviously the iffy one. Didn't get the money he wanted, so he's like, cool, I'll just come back. And now the question isn't if Julian Bosnick starts, it's will he be the Friday or Saturday guy? And where do you put him and Will Sanders in that rotation? So massive boost for Justin Parker's biggest commitment right now was Julian Bosnick announcing his decision a few hours after that became official. So massive there. And I believe Kevin Madden's the guy y'all were talking about with the experienced guy that's played a lot at Virginia Tech. Doesn't strike out, doesn't hit for a lot of power, but a really polished bat that can play in the infield and give South Carolina just another guy that they can turn to that's seen high-level pitching before, and they can just slap into the middle infield or somewhere wherever they want to. And I think that's a good pickup for South Carolina as well.
Collyn Taylor, Gamecock Central 150 on this Monday afternoon. All right, real quick on the basketball front. First of all, A'ja Wilson and Dawn Staley late tonight in the Olympics. Dawn is used to the Olympics. She's held a flag. She has some gold medals. We all know her story. But A'ja Wilson, of course, will join her later on this evening. We'll see if the ladies can go win a gold medal for Team USA. So certainly paying attention to that. On the men's side of things, Collyn, how much time did you get to spend around Columbia and the Pro-Am over the last week and a half or so? In what did South Carolina's current players and some of their future guys look like?
Yeah, so I got to watch I've kept up with the first 2 days, but I got to watch all of yesterday on Sunday, up close and personal. And I was impressed with a lot of those guys. I mean, Devin Carter obviously put up some massive numbers. I think he averaged like 33 points in 3 games. He came in as a scorer and didn't do anything to really dispel the notion during that Pro-Am. So he was really impressive. The guy that I was honestly impressed with was James Reese. South Carolina needs a guy. They haven't had a guy necessarily that can create his own shot to the degree that they've needed it. And I think James Reese gives you a little bit of that. He's quick. He can make tough shots. And I think that he's going to be a pretty good one. I think that if he can continue to get bigger and put on some weight, I'm sure that he'll be able to contribute at an SEC level. And the guy that I was talking to, a couple coaches, use the word coach loosely for a Pro-Am, but coaches for these teams. And they said their biggest surprise was probably, Jacoby Wright. They went in not sure if he was going to be able to shoot the ball at a high clip against good opponents, but I think he shot like 43% from the field and 50% from three. So the coaches really, really enjoyed Jacoby Wright and Devin Carter and James Reese. Reese both showed that they're able to kind of make some tough shots and score the ball at a pretty high rate.
How many players total did South Carolina have in the Pro-Am?
Bunch. Let me look up the number. I mean, I know all 3 freshmen played, so that's 3. James Reese played. Josh Gray did not. So they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 guys play, and then 8 of those guys were scholarship guys.
Wow. Okay.
So
I mean, that was I saw Sindarius and PJ. There's a bunch of people back there this year. There always is. It's just a fantastic event. Kerry Rich and those guys do a wonderful, wonderful job. All right, Collyn, I do want to get to some football with you, kind of winding things down here the last 4 or 5 minutes, and then we'll let you mosey about on your weekday starter this Monday afternoon. Expected to sometime the next few days get a schedule from South Carolina as far as what the preseason practice schedule, as a matter of fact, looks like. So we'll be keeping our eyes out for that from Steve Fink. Got a little neat nugget this morning. I saw that Jordan Strawn has been added to a preseason watch list. That's for the Butkus Award. You got JJ Ngbare. He's on. Gamecocks have had some names lately starting to pop up on some of these preseason watch lists. But there are some other big names that we're clearly going to be paying close attention to, specifically in places like defensive line. Jordan Birch, Zach Pickens, 5-star guys. What are you most paying attention to as we head here kind of down this final stretch of summer and then we get into fall camp? Some of the names that you're like, yeah, I want to see what this guy looks like when camp opens next week.
It's probably Jalen Brooks. It's
Wow.
Jalen Brooks and Xavier Legette if I'm having to do that. Just because, listen, I know what we're going to get. You know what you're going to get from the defensive line. You know what you're going to get from tight end room. You kind of have a sense of what quarterback's going to look like. Obviously, that'll be a big focus point. But the wide receiver group has, it's fair to say, not lived up to expectations over the last couple of years. And you need a number one out there. You need a number one receiver that you can go to. And Jalen Brooks obviously had some really good reviews coming out of camp last year. Obviously didn't have the year he wanted to, and there's a lot of reasons why. But he's the guy with the most returning targets on this year's team from the receiver standpoint. And I want to know what he looks like and if he can chisel out an area to be a number one wide receiver, because South Carolina absolutely needs it.
We've heard all this talk for a while, right, Collyn? They're going to use – we know about the tailback room. It's deep and it's good. They're going to use a bunch of tight ends. There's been plenty of discussion about using those guys at wide receiver, Jaheim Bell or Nick Muse or E.J. Jenkins for that matter. But based on your information, what you're saying is, yeah, they can use all those guys all they want to, but in order to compete in this league, you're going to have a couple of wide receivers, period, the end. It doesn't matter how talented those other dudes are.
Yeah, listen, you can have the name of the game, and I know South Carolina fans get PTSD when they hear this word. The name of the game is explosive plays and being able to take chunk plays and move the ball down the field quickly. And Nick Muse is a great tight end. Jaheim Bell is a great athlete. E.J. Jenkins is a massive human being. But at some point, you're going to need a wide receiver to step up, even if it's just one or two guys. You don't need 4 or 5. You just need 1 or 2 that can beat an SEC level corner off the ball, get into the secondary, and make a play downfield. And, Nick Muse, again, great. I don't know if he's able to be that guy that can beat someone off the line from a cornerback perspective. A linebacker, absolutely. From a cornerback perspective, and I think that's where you need to look at Jalen Brooks and Xavier Legette, someone in that wide receiver room that's going to be able to take a top off the defense.
What about DeCarrion Joyner?
Yeah, I think that he's going to be. I don't know if he's necessarily a downfield threat, but DeCarrion's going to be a guy, I think, that in this offense to where you can use him in reverses, screens, and use him in the middle of the field and just put him into space. And, maybe he takes a 10-yard, in route and turns it into 25, and that's an explosive play and keeps the defense honest that way. But you still need a guy that's going to be able to, hey, just go run straight, and Luke Doty will get you the ball, and, it's a touchdown. So they've missed that the last couple of years depth-wise. Brian Edwards was that. They didn't have a lot around him, and they need someone that's going to be able to step up and do that this year.
Final question, Collyn, going as we're probably a little bit over a week out from fall camp for South Carolina. Which side of the ball has more questions as they enter camp, offense or defense?
I think the most questions is on the defensive end, but the biggest question mark's on the offensive end. The defense, you don't know who's going to play linebacker. You don't know how the secondary pieces are going to fit together. The offense, the biggest question mark is quarterback. What's Luke Doty look like? How much has he developed from the end of his freshman year to the spring to now? But from a defensive standpoint, I think you have questions of how the defensive line pieces will fit together. who's going to play linebacker, period, and then how you kind of rebound from a really bad year in the secondary and if the pieces fit together there well.
I got a feeling that you're going to be fairly busy over the next week and a half or so, getting folks geared up and primed for preseason camp. Collyn Taylor with Gamecock Central. I know that you're on the Locked On the Gamecocks podcast a little bit later on with Keith Alsep, so certainly looking forward to that. And you know what? We might just ask you to come back maybe next week, and we can actually talk about what's happening in camp. How about that?
I am you tell me when, and I am so excited to actually talk about some actual sports instead of all this speculation and talking season. Let's talk about actual football now.
Actual football. Let them get on the field, and let's see what it actually looks like. I know. I couldn't agree more. We'll send you a box of dinosaur nuggets in the mail for your time. And as always, we thank you, my friend.
Appreciate you guys having me on as always.
Later.
There you go. Collyn Taylor with Gamecock Central. Bob Bowlesby has released a statement. Not going to have time to read the whole thing, but the end of the statement is this, quote, the remaining 8 institutions will work together in a collaborative manner to thoughtfully and strategically position the Big 12 Conference for continued success, both athletically and academically, long into the future. By that
statement that doesn't say a whole lot.
Nope. By that statement is we're not going anywhere, but that changes in about 30 seconds. So
the statement also references like we'll work together with the other 2 institutions for 4 years. There's a lot in that statement that could change.
That's probably not going to happen.
No.
Thanks to Mike Morgan, Wes Mitchell, Collyn Taylor, and of course Darren Goldwater. And thanks to all of you as always. Have a marvelous Monday afternoon. We're back tomorrow at noon on the JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen.